Hi, I'm Eric Sorensen. We're sitting on a Hunt 52, which is the product of the work of the two gentlemen sitting next to me. Immediately to my left is John Deknatel, who is the owner of Raymond Hunt Associates, a yacht design firm that we're going to talk about today. And sitting next to John is Peter VanLancker. Peter is the president of Hunt Yachts, which takes the Hunt designs and builds a whole range of yachts, which we'll talk about as well. Peter, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your background with John. You've known John for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, I've known John for years, and actually, I think our first, meeting was really around a company called Blackwatch, which was a company that was a sport fishing company in that era when there was a lot of boats going offshore to fish, and sort of fell into it the way this industry works. You kind of step into things like that,
sure.
And started working with a hull that existed with a gentleman that knew John, and we developed a company out of that. And then I went on to work in other design firms and brought the Hunt design to those design firms because I knew I could count on it. It wasn't second guessing, and it was going to always be the best running hull, and I didn't have to reconfigure it because it was right the first time.
You don't have to get out the cans of Bondo.
Oh, I've seen that so many times.
Or put hooker rocker in the bottom.
So many times. Yeah. And actually, that was why at one point when we were working together, brought the Hunt design to the Four Winds, was because they would take a hull and then they were used to, going back and reworking it because they never expected it to run right the first time.
Right.
When you got a Hunt hull, yes, you paid them to do it, but in the long run, it was less expensive because it was right.
So you built a lot of Hunts under a lot of different brands.
I sure have. Yeah. It has been a great experience, and then when I joined them, 10 years ago, it was kind of like, well, okay, I wanted to return to New England, and John and Wynn had started this company in 1998. I joined them in 2000, and then we kind of never looked back.
That's right. That's right. I remember, nominally, Wynn is the CEO and Peter's the president of Hunt Yachts, and I said, I remember asking Wynn about 10 years ago, so you're the CEO or the chairman of Hunt Yachts, and Peter works for you then, right? He said, Peter doesn't work for anybody.
Yeah, I remember you told that. That's about how it works. I hope so.
I thought that was pretty good. Just tell me about a project over the 40-plus years you've been designing boats, John. What's a project that comes to mind as being real special or real exciting to work with, and you really were pleased with the result?
A bit of a mix. I mean, I think sort of developing. I mean, the idea of Hunt Yachts was to develop a line of boats where the designer had more input than working for a company being run by a bunch of other people, and a lot of the product input, the hull is going to be Hunt, but a lot of the other decisions are going to be made by the marketing department and the management.
Right.
This is a chance really to make the boats more Hunt, and that was really the impetus to say this makes sense, even though maybe the world doesn't need another boat company. But
starting Hunt Yachts 10 years ago.
Yeah, being able to start a company where where the design group with Peter and people, but would really be controlling the product.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the overall philosophy is you make the right hull and the right package, and then you put the rest of the stuff in the boat. And if it doesn't fit, you make it a foot longer rather than making it fatter or wider.
Right.
And there's a lot of that going on. You're making it fatter and wider, and the shapes are wrong because it's just driven by the inside of the boat rather than designed to go through the water.
Boat still it shows. Look at this, honey. Here's the his and her closets and the king size bed.
Use the boat because it won't run anywhere.
That's
right. Too much windage, or it's too tough.
Yeah, we have the ability to be more purist. I mean, we're not trying to sell the biggest interior in a given size boat. I mean, it's a boat is a package of a lot of good things, but we're not saying this is not the biggest cabin.
Yeah, and it's comfort ultimately if you can't get the family to go because their experience in the boat wasn't a pleasant one.
Right.
Then you're on your
Why
own.
own it?
Yeah.
Why own it?
Point. So you gotta.
So you give them a good running boat, they're going to have a lot more value and a lot more pleasure in owning it.
So the boat really represents the philosophy and what guys like Peter and Wynn think a good boat ought to be.
Right.
I mean, really, it's not a cabin cruiser. It's not a floating home. It's not a style piece. It's a functional, contemporary, sensible boat.
Hey, John, I remember you mentioned this 5 or 6 years ago. You said, you talked about the seaworthiness being enhanced by a good running boat because you can move around quicker, you can get back to port quicker.
Yeah, I mean, it's a safer boat in a lot of ways. I think one of the amazing things is if you look at the very first Ray Hunt design, which had about 24 degrees of dead rise at the stern and not much more in the midships, maybe 25 or 26.
Right.
Pretty monohedron.
Right.
The racing guys have tried every variation of that, and that has been really amazingly still the best.
Still what they're doing.
You may have a little bit less aft because you give that away because you're not going to fly the boat through the air and land on the stern all the time.
Right.
But it really is uncanny how right the first design was and how really foolproof those boats are. I mean, you can do almost anything with them, downwind or any other way, without getting yourself in serious trouble.
Right.
And there aren't many boats like that. There's a funny story. Ray Hunt, one of the early boats called Sea Blitz, which is a sort of a transition boat that Ray designed. Mm-hmm. He was out with a bunch of people, supposedly including Olin Stevens, and this may be a made-up story, but it's a good one. They were showing.
Doesn't have to be true.
They were trying to sell the boat. So Ray's driving the boat downwind, and he leaves the wheel to tie his shoelace. Yeah. And everybody else on the boat is sort of waiting for the boat to do a backflip or whatever. And he's just sort of quietly in his inimitable style, sort of saying, it's pretty good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and like Eric, I was in the Coast Guard, so I'm used to throwing these things around, and I've thrown these things around, and they're literally like taking a cat and throwing it out the window. Somehow they always land on their feet.
They do. I mean,
they really are. It is uncanny, and it's and that's really where the safety is, because it's predictable every time, because you know how it's going to react in a certain situation.
It is predictability that's so important.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
They're also mild, as mild as you can get depending on the sea state, but it's always the same, so it doesn't surprise you, it doesn't broach, it doesn't get weird. They're always consistently the same reactions and stuff like that. It's also the elegance and the durability of the boat as well. It's understated, if you look at the lines of the boat, you can see how well they flow and things like that.
Sure.
And again, that comes from years and years and years of understanding the shapes on these boats to make sure that they're the right shapes, and it's very subtle, some of this stuff.
It is.
So this depth of knowledge goes beyond even just the hull form, and it goes to the forms of the decks, it goes to how to use the spaces and things like that, so they don't become too small a space and that sort of thing. So
it's not a boat you can use.
Yeah, it's a boat you can actually use and function and feel comfortable in, because some of the boats will look great on paper, they'll look great at the dock, at the boat show, but then, when you really have to live with them and use them over years and years.
The width of the side decks, the length of the burrs, the visibility from
the durability of the boat, how durable the whole boat is.
Gotcha.
Because our goal is really to build things that are heirlooms that can be passed on to other generations.
I'm obviously a partisan here. I'm a fan. And
we feel fortunate to have Eric be a part of it. He's helped us a lot.
That's right. That's right. Don't pay me anything, do you?
No.
We got to work on that one.
Right. Let's buy dinner.
That's right.
There you go. All right.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks for listening, and happy boating.